Good. Well, thank you, Ken, for that introduction. It's, boy, we go back, I know we were talking about 30 plus years. And friends, it's so good to be here today. I've really been looking forward to this and to being a part of this conference. And I'll just say a quick word. One of the things we do with the ministry is we put on the yearly conference. This will be our 32nd year for the conference. We have an incredible lineup again of speakers. I can't even think of them all, but I know Joby Martin is coming, Crawford Loritz, Mark Batterson, Dan Seaborn, Sean McDowell, I don't know. The list goes on. It's just a great lineup again. And I would just encourage you, if you have never been a host site, to really consider being a host site, to bringing the conference to your church, to your city. It's a way to supplement what you are doing in your local church. And we allow you to do your own worship. You want to do your own breakouts. We want you to use it so you can more effectively minister to your men. I have a good friend of mine, one of our staff members, Dan Wetzel. Dan, are you in here? Or I guess he's at our table in the back. Oh, there he is. He's back there. And so if you want to talk to Dan, he'll be right out at our table. Talk to myself. I'll be out there all day as well. And we can explain more about the conference and all that we do as a ministry. This year, I think we had about 140 host sites coast to coast. We had 125 small groups in dorms, prisons, marketplace, living rooms, man caves, garages, senior living, condo complexes, wherever men are, we had small groups, and then we had countries from all over the world involved as well. About 20,000 guys this year were involved in the conference. So just think about that and talk to your guys about it, and we want to come alongside you and help in any way that we can. Well, I want to take you back a few years. And, everything in Texas is big. And what's really big in Texas is football. And they love their high school football. And there were two teams from the city that were tied. They were both undefeated. They were both 9-0, and they were playing in the final game. And so whoever won this game had the city bragging rights. They also would win the conference, and they also got to move on to the state tournament. So it's a big game. And so the home team comes in, and they get their uniforms on, they get taped up, and they get ready. And the coach told them to go into the gymnasium and to lay down and just prepare themselves. And so they went into the gym and laid down, and it was pitch black. All you saw were the green or red lights above the exit sign doors, but that was it. And so they're all laying there. They're mentally going through their plays, emotionally getting ready. And so the coach comes in. He says, "Okay, guys, get up, put on your helmet. It's time to go. You're about to play in the biggest game of your life." And they walk across the parking lot, they walk across the practice field and into the stadium. When they get in the stadium, there's about 16,000 people in the stands. The bands are playing. It's just absolutely electric. And first half goes, and the home team is winning 21-7. They really had their way with the other team. So they come into the locker room at halftime. They're hooting and hollering. They're cheering. They're yelling. They're screaming. They're thinking, "This is it. We've got this, baby." And the coach comes in and says, "Listen, guys, this game is only half over. And if you don't play it the same intensely you played in the first half, in the second half, you're going to lose this game." And so they went out there in the second half, and they just annihilated the team. They won 49-10. So now they come into the locker room, and now they're truly celebrating. They are city champs, conference champs. They're going to the playoffs. The quarterback, who had the game of his life, he threw for 3 touchdowns, ran for 1 touchdown. He's just drained, emotionally, physically drained. And so he gets up from the locker room and all that's going on, the bedlam and the reporters and everything, and he just takes a walk. And he walks back into the gymnasium, and the gymnasium is still pitch black. And he just is walking through the gym, and he's just like coming down. He can just feel himself. And he gets about halfway across the gym, and he looks, and he sees something on the ground. And the closer he gets, he realizes it's a body. Matter of fact, it's number 29. Number 29 had stayed out too late on Thursday night. And when the coach told him to go mentally prepared, he fell asleep. And so the quarterback walks up to him and he kicks him in the ribs, and the kid jumps up, he throws on his helmet, he says, "Hey, I'm ready to go." And the quarterback looked in his eyes, he said, "Listen, buddy," he said, "the game's over. You just missed the biggest game of your life." And friends, the reason I share that story is that's the condition of men today. Most men in our society, even in our churches, are asleep. They are sleeping right through life. They're sleeping through their marriage. They're sleeping through their parenting responsibilities. They're sleeping through work. They're sleeping in church, sometimes literally. But they're missing out on the biggest game in their lives. And what I want to do this afternoon and tonight is I want to talk about how do we as church leaders, men and women together, how do we awaken the sleeping giant of the church? What can we do to awaken them, so to see men come to Christ, men to go deep with Jesus and fall in love with him, to grow up in him, to get out of the pews and into the game and to begin to serve him, to mobilize this army of people to go out into the community, into the world, and make a difference for King Jesus. That's what we're going to talk about. And if you have your Bibles, I want you to turn with me to John chapter 4. This is one of my all-time favorite passages. I've got about 100 favorite passages. This is one of them. And in verse 34 of chapter 4, Jesus said this. He said, "My food," said Jesus, "is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work." Now, of course, what we see here is that he has this eternal perspective, right? I mean, the disciples want him to want to feed him. "Hey, did you get your McDonald's? Did you have your Burger King?" And Jesus says, "That's not my food." He says, "My food is something else." He has this eternal perspective. And he says, "Do not say 4 more months and then the harvest. I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. Even now the reaper draws his wages. Even now he harvests the crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows and another reaps, is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor." Friends, what I want to do in this first session is I want to help you lift your eyes up. And I want to lift your eyes up to the harvest. And don't say, "Well, we're going to get to that later, and 4 more months, 6 more months, 1 more year, 2 more years." I want to lift your eyes up and say, you know what, we need to have a sense of urgency about this. Because when you look at the situation of men today, all right, we have a serious man problem. Men today are wounded. All right, they have father wounds, they have abuse wounds, they have work wounds, they have mother wounds, but men are wounded everywhere you look. They're just bleeding out, and they don't even realize it. And when they're bleeding out in all different ways, it just comes out sideways and causes all kinds of problems. Men today are addicted. I think you know this, but 68% of the men that are in your church on Sunday are struggling with pornography. 50% of pastors are struggling with pornography. This is not out there. This is in here. Almost 100% of men under 30, pornography is just a regular part of their lives. It's an issue that we're struggling with. And if it's not that, then it's gambling. If it's not gambling, it's alcohol. If it's not alcohol, it's work. If it's not work, it's drugs. And the list goes on. Men today are friendless. The average man over 35 does not have one close friend. Not one. He's living in isolation. And isolated men do stupid things. I always tell our guys, all right, that isolation is not masculinity is not isolation, it's stupidity. And so we're going to talk about how do we connect men together. Men today are confused. They're confused over what it means to be a man, because every 10 years, our society gives them a different picture, a different model of what it means to be a man. And so they're trying to figure out, what does this look like? What does sexuality look like? What does masculinity look like? And there is confusion over that. But here's the point. Men are also the largest unreached people group in the world. And so I have the incredible privilege, like Ken said, to travel in country after country and country all over this world, working with men, and it's the same everywhere you go. It's the highest unreached people group in the world. And here's what you need to know, is that confused men, lost men, cause the majority of our problems in society today. And so whether it's the number of people that are in jail will be men, the number of people who are murderers, commit crimes, and the list goes on, in every single area is men. And so the question is, what do we do? Do we just throw up our hands and walk away? No. What I want to talk about today in this first session is, how do we develop a male-friendly culture in our church? Now, you might be saying, but I'm not the senior pastor. Or you might be saying, I don't work with any men. That's not my responsibility. I'm not the men's pastor. I'm not the senior pastor. I'm not even the associate pastor. And that's fine. Don't worry about that. Because here's what I've done in so many of these pastors' conferences and gatherings around the country. If you're in children's ministry, you're working with men. Because you're trying to recruit men to teach in your Sunday school classes. And so you are working with men. If you are working in student ministry, you are working with men because you're recruiting them to be a part of your team. If you're working in adult ministries, you're working with men. You're working with a worship team. You go, well, I'm not any of those. I'm a worship leader. There's probably men on your worship team, or you want some more men on your worship team, or your ushering team, or your counseling team, or whatever it is. We're all working with men. And so what I'm going to do in this session this afternoon is I want to talk about, what do we know about men that influences how we minister to men? All right? What do we know about men that influences how we minister to men? And I'm going to give you 11 principles and 1 or 2 applications. I'm going to make it very practical. This isn't a preach. This is more of a seminar. This afternoon, tonight will be more of a preach, but I want to give you the basics after 35 years of working with men, interacting with thousands and thousands of men, 30 years as a pastor of men's ministry, 5 years full-time in this. I've learned a couple things about who men are and how we minister to them. So get your notebooks out, get your iPad out, get whatever you're going to take notes on, because I'm going to fly and give you 11 principles. Number 1, men are looking for relevance. The number 1 reason that men do not go to church is they say it's irrelevant. Matter of fact, 72% of men who do not go to church say the number 1 reason is the church is not relevant. The church today is not answering the questions that men are asking, and we're answering the questions they are not asking. And so if we're going to reach men, grow men, mature men, mobilize men, we need to be answering the questions, addressing the issues that they're interested in. So for example, a study was done among guys at church. And they said, how many of you in the last year have heard a sermon on work? A whole sermon just on work. Just one sermon. 90% said they had not heard a sermon this year on work. So what does that tell that guy? That tells that man in your church, my church, that where I spend 50, 60 hours a week does not connect where I spend an hour on Sunday morning. There's a disconnect. That they must not be interested in what I'm dealing with, much less a whole series. Guys are interested in work, and they want to know, how does faith and work go together? They want to know about purpose and marriage and parenting and sexuality. What is success? What does success look like? How do I discover my purpose? How do I make a difference in the world? How do I develop friendships? We start by talking about those things. So here are your 2 applications. Application number 1, if you're leading a small group, that when you get to the end of your time, you make sure you have time for application. Don't just spend your time talking about the 27 different views of the second coming of Christ, because they really don't care. They want to know, how does this play out when I go home to my wife and my kids when I walk into work? Leave time in your small group for application where they can land the plane and say, here's what obedience in this area looks like. The second application, I know we have some preachers here, is that make sure you want to talk to the issues that your men are dealing with. I have a whole seminar on this. This is a whole nother one. We'll do another time, another year. But when I talk about speaking to men, I would encourage you to get a focus group. Get a bunch of guys from your church, meet with them on a monthly basis, quarterly basis. What are the issues you're dealing with? What are the topics that we need to be addressing? What are some of the illustrations from your life, from the workplace, that you would suggest? But to get the input of the men from your church, so when you're speaking on Sunday, you are addressing where they're at and what they're dealing with. And I will tell you, if you start speaking to them, you'll be speaking to everyone. All right? They're looking for relevance. Principle number 2, men want to be involved in a cause greater than themselves. Men want to be involved in something greater and grander than themselves. When Steve Jobs was putting together his original dream team years and years ago, when he was looking for engineers to start Apple, he went around and he says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a dent in the universe through the development of the personal computer. All right, we're a few years from that time. Would anyone disagree that our world has been changed through the development of the personal computer? For sure. In all due respect to Steve Jobs, but that's the minor leagues. That is such the minor leagues. That as far as the church is concerned, we have the greatest vision there is. That you and I get to put a dent, not in the universe, but in eternity. When a man or a woman or a boy or girl comes to Christ, their eternity is absolutely changed. And so we have an opportunity to tell our people in our church that they can be involved in something greater and grander than themselves. That if they're going to spend their money and their time and their energy, it's going to make a difference. That what they're doing is worthwhile. So what's the application? Number 1, make sure you are clarifying for your people on a regular basis the vision and the purpose of your church or your organization. That they are hearing it on a regular basis. They know, what is the hill that we're climbing? Is this hill worth it? And boy, is it ever. Because we're going to put a dent in eternity. We're going to change the trajectory of people's lives. We're going to see addictions broken. We're going to see marriages healed. We're going to see people's lives transformed. And we get to be a part of that. And your people get to be a part of that. And we get to share that vision on a regular basis. The second application in this area is I would encourage you to do ministry in teams. Guys love to be a part of teams. So whether that's a children's ministry team, a Sunday school team, a student team, a worship team, whatever it is. Guys, when you say, hey, what are some of your favorite memories? They will go back to that high school baseball team, high school football team. They'll go back to the fraternity that they were a part of, or the college sports team that they were on, or the drama team, or whatever it was. Men love to be connected and lock arms and do things together. So think about, how can we get men on teams? Everything we do in our church and ministry is based on teams. Okay, principle number 3, men want a shot at greatness. They want a shot at greatness. I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone that wakes up in the morning and says, gosh, I would really like to be a loser. Right? I mean, what guy does that? What guy says, I want to be a failure? I want to mess up. I want to really have a crummy marriage. I want to be a really bad dad. I want to be just a nothing at work. No one does. The guys that I run with, they want a shot at greatness. They want to be a hero. They want to be a champion. They want to do it right. They don't want to just be a nice guy. You and I know guys not looking for nice guys, right? They don't want to be a nice guy. They want to be a great guy. They want to be a champion. They want to make a difference where it matters. I spend a ton of time on planes, way too much time on planes. And every time I get on a plane and I sit down next to someone else, I have a decision to make. Do I want to talk or not? Do I want to engage or not? So if I don't want to engage and they go, hey, so what do you do? I go, oh, I'm a pastor. Can I change seats? They'll sit anywhere to get away from the pastor. Now, if I want to engage, they'll say, what do you do? I'll say, well, my job is to equip men to be champions in life. And then they sort of do the doggy tilt. And they go, well, what do you mean by that? I go, oh, I'm so glad you asked. Let me tell you. But friends, that's our job. That's our job description. Our job description is to equip the men of our church and our ministries to be champions in life. That's what we're about. And boy, is the Bible full of champions. Is the Bible full of examples of the good and the bad and the ugly. And we get to help them understand what that looks like from God's perspective and what he's looking for. So what are a couple of applications? Number one, first application is we need to encourage them. People are beat up all day long, right? Men are beat up all day long. How many of the guys in your church walk into work, do you think, and their boss is waiting at the front door for them? And they're shaking their hand when they come to work on Monday morning and saying, hey, it is so great that you came to work today. I am so happy, all right? I don't know where this company would be if you weren't here. I really appreciate you putting in, 8, 10, 12 hours today because we could never do what we're doing without you. And then when they leave at the end of the day, the boss is there again, shaking their hand, giving them a big hug. Hey, just great that you're working for us, for the blood, sweat, and tears that you give. And then when they drive home, their kids are all standing on the driveway waiting for dad to drive up, right? And they just give them a big hug. Oh, dad, thanks so much for all you did today, that you worked so we can have a meal on the table tonight, right? And then they turn on the sitcoms at night. And all the sitcoms just build up men, right? They just make men look like buffoons. And then they go to bed. They're just beat up and beat up and beat up and beat up. This is the place where they can be encouraged and not beat up. You can text them, you can email them, you can call them. You can meet them for lunch, breakfast, dinner. Hey, thanks so much for being a part of the church. Thanks so much for leading that ministry. Thanks so much for the contribution you made at that team meeting last night. Boy, I just really appreciate what you're doing. I got your back. I know you're going through a rough time right now. I'm praying for you. Just a short little text, just a little note. Maybe even just get a piece of paper if you still have paper and just write a note, and put it in the mail. And just let them know you're on their side. You got their back. You're locking arms with them. But men are looking for encouragement. And then the second thing is give them a vision. Help them catch a vision of what greatness looks like in the eyes of God. And be talking about that, what it means to be a champion, what it means to be great in God's eyes. Principle number 4, men want to be challenged. Men view everything around them as competition. Right? They view it as competition, something to conquer, something to beat, something to win, right? I mean, that's just, and I know I'm going to get in trouble on this, but I just say this generally. This isn't always true, and, any emails, just send them over to Ken. He'll take care of them. But sometimes it's just maybe the way we approach shopping. At least it is for me and my wife, me and my 2 daughters. Is, we have 4 kids, 2 daughters, 2 boys, 2 sons, and sometimes they'll be home for Christmas because they're scattered all over the country. And, Colleen and the 2 girls, Kristen and Angela, they get up and, a couple days before Christmas and they have their coffee and they get their map out of the stores in Milwaukee and then they pray about it and then they go off shopping. And, they're gone for 8, 10, 12 hours and I'm just watching ball games. It's great. And then they come home and they don't have anything. I go, well, tell me about your day. And they go, oh, Dad, this was the best day of our lives. I go, why? I go, we got to shop. We got to be together. I don't view shopping like that. For me, it's something to win. It's something to conquer. So every single year, I try to do my shopping in less time than the year before. And you just go in, you find it, you buy it, you bag it, and you get out. And that's just the way it is. Now, I know that's a generalization. I don't want to hurt any feelings and things like that. But men view something to win, to conquer. They view it as competition. They want to take risks. They want an adventure. They want to be a part of something, all right? They want to be challenged. So what's the application? Raise the bar on what you're asking of your men. 35 years ago, when I started as the men's ministry pastor at Elmbrook, I started a discipleship course called Top Gun. And I asked 24 guys to be a part of it. 12 men on Tuesday morning, 12 men on Wednesday morning. And I said, guys, there's going to be 2 hours of homework every week, and you're going to meet in class 2 hours every week. And I can still remember talking to men's leaders around the country, and they said, Steve, you're crazy. Men don't read anymore. Men won't do it. They won't do the homework. They're not going to show up. They're not going to be there. Well, at the end of the year, we were 24 for 24. And 16 of those guys said, we want to lead a group next year. Well, we knew we couldn't start 16 groups, so we put them together. So the next year we did 8 groups, then 10 groups, then 12 groups, then 14 groups, and now we're 35 years later. And thousands of guys have been discipled over a 2-year process because they wanted to be challenged. They got sick and tired of just talking about the Bucks, Brewers, Packers, Badgers, and the weather. They wanted to be challenged. So raise the bar. I think so often we're just happy if guys show up. But boy, they want more than that. They want to do more than show up. They want to be challenged. The second application, guys and gals, is make the ask. You know, someone famously said years ago, nothing gets done in the kingdom of God without an ask. Make the ask. If you're leading children's ministry, make the ask. Ask that guy to lead. If you're on the worship team, ask that guy to be a part of the team. If you're in charge of small groups, ask that guy to lead a small group, to be an apprentice in that small group. Ask that person to give to your ministry, to the church, and to give on a regular basis. They want to be challenged. They want to be on the winning team. They want to know that they're going somewhere. Okay, principle number 5. Men are looking for action. Men define themselves by what they do, right? So what happens? You go to a gathering and you start talking with some friends, some neighbors, some coworkers, and generally you go up to someone, maybe a woman, and she'll say, well, tell me about yourself, and she'll tell you about every one of the kids, every one of the grandkids, and the grandkids' friends, and what the grandkids are doing, and things like that. And then you go to the guy, what do you tell me about life? And you go, here's what I do. Again, it's a generalization. But so often as men, we define ourselves by our identities based on what we do. And so men are looking for action. And here's the principle, guys. Here's what we've learned, friends, is that the side by side often leads to the face to face. That's the principle. So when Katrina hit, every single month for about 5 years, we sent a van down to help in the cleanup process. 8 people. And guys were bringing their friends, bringing their coworkers, bringing their neighbors. 24 hours down, 24 hours back, and 5 days on the ground. And guess what happened? We saw so many guys come to Christ. So many guys begin to get involved because they want to do something. They want to make a difference. They don't want to just sit around. And so give them opportunities to serve. Let them serve in the areas that they're good at. All right? Not everyone can pound. I can't. I have a hammer and a screwdriver. Only 2 tools in my entire house. I would never go to Habitat. My brother runs Habitat from Milwaukee. I will give him money, but I am not going to go to that site because I'll kill someone or break the house. But that's why I took guys on medical teams, and we set up a clinic in the Philippines. We took surgeons and pediatricians and eye doctors and dentists, and we let them do what they do best. And we took business guys to Suceava, Romania after the walls came down and let them help the Romanians set up small businesses because they're good at doing business things. Get guys into their sweet spots. Get them serving in ways that are consistent with how God made them and what they enjoy doing. So put together teams and get them out there. Okay, principle number 6. Men are looking for leaders and they want to be leaders. Men do not follow programs. They follow leaders. If you're a leader of the church, small groups, worship, children's, high school, lead. Lead. Men are looking for bold, visionary, courageous leadership. Don't be shy. Don't be bashful. Just lead. Guys will respect that. Whatever your role is in the church, whatever you are doing, whatever area of ministry you're involved in, guys are looking for leadership. They want real, true, authentic leadership. So just lead. And then the second principle related to that is men want to know what it means to lead. What does that look like? How can I be a godly leader in the home, church, workplace, and world? And so often we just say to the guys, hey, lead, be the spiritual leader, be a servant leader. What does that look like? What does that mean? How do I do that? We need to give them the practical tools to do that. I still remember years ago, I did a men's breakfast, and we were talking about, helping to disciple your children. And I wanted to take it from the theoretical to the practical. So I brought Kristen, my oldest daughter, with me, and she was probably 8 or 9, 10, I don't know, whatever. And so I said, guys, here's what it looks like. Here's what I do. And we took a table, right? We just placed it up front, and she jumped on the table like she was going to bed. She brought over the covers. She was in her jammies. And I went up and I knelt down and I said, I just read this little Bible story from one of those little children's Bible books. It took me about 30 seconds, and those are really good for me, actually. And so I read that, and then I put my hand on her head and I prayed over Kristen for about 15 more seconds, and then I gave her a kiss on the forehead and I left. And the whole thing took about a minute. And I said, guys, is there anyone here that couldn't do that? I said, guys, you don't have to have a PowerPoint. You don't have to get your kids up at 5 a.m. I go, it can be as simple as that. And then she went and changed and she put her backpack on and I said, okay, here's what I do before she goes to school. And I grabbed her and she tried to get away and she's pulling away. We're doing the normal, kid fight thing. And I just grabbed her and for about 30 seconds, I just prayed over her and I sent her off. And I go, is there anyone here that can't do that? And so what we did is we just would constantly just bottom shelf it. Guys want the bottom shelf. They want to know, give me the practical application. How do I do this? Let's not talk theory. Let's not scrape the heavenlies. Let's just bring it down to where it hits the road. And what does that look like in my marriage, in my parenting, at work, in the community, when I'm coaching the soccer team, whatever it is. And then teach some classes on it. Include that in your discipleship, all right? What does that look like, and how do I lead in life? Okay, number 8. All right, I got 4 minutes here. Men are looking for fun. All right, I don't have to say a whole lot here. Men love to laugh, all right? And I think so many unbelievers think that you have to check your humor bone at the door when you come to the church, when you become a follower of Christ. Men love to laugh. Make fun of yourself. Just, do that. Tell jokes, tell stories, show bloopers, do different things. But just get your guys out of the church, all right? Where does a man feel most uncomfortable? Right here in these 4 walls. He has to become someone he's not. And so get him out. The more you do outside the 4 walls of a church, the deeper the conversations will be in your men's small groups. And so go to ball games, go hunting, go fishing, go golfing, whatever they love to do. Just get out and let them have fun. Let them enjoy life and do the things they enjoy doing. And don't let them think that, they just have to be here. But get them out there. The majority of your ministry to men will be out there. That's where it happens. It tells us in John 1:14 that Jesus came and dwelt among us. He pitched his tent. The beauty and the miracle of the incarnation is not the distance traveled, it's the change in environment. He left the glory, splendor, and majesty of heaven, and he came to earth. He lived among us. That's what ministry to men is all about, guys. And so I would constantly have meetings with a purpose, breakfast, lunch, where I'd meet guys in their offices, I'd meet guys in restaurants where they were, where they would feel most comfortable. I never had a meeting at church, never had a meeting in my office. I wanted to meet them on their turf. When I first started ministry to men 35 years ago, I met with an older pastor, Virgil, played football for Bear Bryant down at Bama. Hey. And I said, Virgil, what advice do you have for me? He said, ministry to men is on their time, their turf, and their agenda. That's the best advice I ever received on ministry to men. Their time, non-family time, their turf, where they feel most comfortable. You give men the home court advantage and their agenda. Not what you want to talk about, but what they want to talk about. Let them have fun. Principle number 8. Men are looking for brothers. Most men do not have a model of what male friendship looks like. Most men do not have a close male friend. They have acquaintances, they have golfing buddies or a fishing buddy or a hunting buddy, but they don't have a friend, a soulmate, someone they can really talk to, someone that'll be there at 2 a.m. when life goes south. And so what are some applications? Number one, model it. Model it. As a leader, show them what male friendship looks like. Model male friendship. Second, teach on it. The Bible's full of stories. The book of Proverbs is loaded. And you have other models of friendship. Teach on it. And then provide environments where men can gather and get connected with other men. Where they can meet maybe 6 or 8 guys at a table and just talk. And maybe out of that, one of those relationships might go a little bit deeper. But really what church is all about, what ministry is all about, is we are environment creators. And so we want to create those environments that are male friendly, where a guy will feel comfortable and safe to come and just to get to know some guys and begin to share and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'll tell you right now, it takes time. You cannot hurry that process. Number 9, men are looking for healing. Every single man that walks into your church is bleeding. They're hurting. They're broken. They're wounded. I love the movie Black Hawk Down, story of the Marines, the soldiers in Somalia. And there's a scene in the movie about halfway through where these soldiers have gone in to extract a drug lord. And this had turned into a battle for their lives. And there's so many guys that have gotten injured from this because they didn't wear their armor, they didn't have their night vision, they didn't take enough ammunition, didn't take enough water. And they've taken all the injured into one building. They pull up an armored personnel carrier to get the guys out, all the injured. And they're loading them into the personnel carrier. And finally the sergeant looks at the private who's driving. He says, okay, let's go, start driving. And the private looks at the sergeant and says, I can't drive, I've been wounded, I've been shot. And the sergeant looks at him and says, we've all been shot, now just start driving. That's the way it is in the church. We've all been shot. We're all wounded. And whether you realize it or not, what's happening is when a man does not deal with those wounds, it comes out sideways. Pornography is not about the sex. It's about the deeper heart issue, the heart wound that he has, or gambling or alcohol. Those are just things, those are anesthetics. That's just to take away the pain, to make them feel better. And so we have to help them to really address the real issues. So what's the applications? Number 1, we talk about it. Don't just act like it's not happening, but address these things and discuss them. Number 2 is you can have, there's a lot of great small group curriculum out there that you can bring in for your men's small groups, or for your women's small groups for that matter, that can help them to begin to address the real issues in life and get the support and the encouragement that they need. Okay, I'll finish with this one. Learn to speak a man's language. You know, years ago there was the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And it's a good book. And it began to just in a real good, funny way sort of depict some of the differences between men and women. When I first started doing ministry to men, I wrote a newsletter to the men of the church. And I gave it to one of my friends. I said, hey, Dave, I said, would you just go through this and circle any feminine language, anything you think the guys might not resonate with? And he just circled the whole thing and he gave it back to me. And he said, you've just been involved in the church way too long. And so just begin to think, okay, what's the language that guys are using that they're going to resonate with? And the Bible's full of it. And so just begin to as you're thinking through your invitations, your newsletters, your language, your sermon titles, and everything you're doing, you're just thinking, what is the language? Am I speaking male? Am I speaking to when we look for speakers for the conference, one of the things we always talk about is we want to have a guy that can speak to the soul of a man. That's the key. You want to speak to the soul of a man, not just to fill his brain. A lot of people can do that, but you want to speak to their soul. When you speak to the soul, you'll draw them in and move them on. All right, I need to stop right there, and we will continue this whole thing tonight. Let's just have a quick word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to be together. Thank you so much for each man and woman that's here, the churches, the families that they represent. And Father, I pray that as each one of us goes back to our churches and our organizations, that you would help us to lift our eyes and to see the condition of men today and to be a part of the solution, to have an intentional plan to develop a culture where a man feels safe and secure to be a part of, where they can blossom and grow into the men that you want them to be. So Lord Jesus, we commit this time to you. We commit our churches to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah.